Morning, everybody. Time to go make some multi counts. Horseman, thank you for being first. Outcast, what's going on? Thanks for coming. Good thing it isn't spring 2024 right now. Why? Is this volume good? It doesn't matter. We're going to mute it. Welcome, everybody, to the Desert Bus stream. We're going to take it from the top and talk to Penn and Teller a little bit. But first, before we start the road trip, we have some business to attend to. I can't listen to this while I read, so that's going bye-bye. Dumb joke, are you familiar with Jeepers Creepers? I saw the film many, many years ago, like when it was relatively new. I remember it was a rental, so it had been out for a little bit. But I want to say it was recent. Yeah, so I kind of remember it. Like, I remember the creature, and like the whole deal is like it consumes pieces of people and then like incorporates those, like takes their eyes and shit. And I remember that, spoilers, the final scene of like Justin Long screaming, and then it like pans across, and like the Jeeper Creeper creature has like his eyes. It is now live. Any reason you're asking about Jeepers Creepers, though? Anything in particular? The sequel is quite good. I remember hearing that, yeah. I should check it out. I've never seen it. I have a podcast where we look at things like that. Maybe we should check out Jeepers Creepers, too. You can now read the fanfic here. I have posted it. That's why I'm, 10 minutes late. I was proofreading, and I also had to convert the markup language to HTML for like italics and stuff like that for posting on AO3. But you can now go to that link. You can read my fanfic. You can comment and leave nice things. Praise. Lots of praise. You could do that. You don't have to, but, it'd make me feel very nice. But today, so officially closed. The channel point redeems are gone. We are no longer writing the fanfic. It will come back someday because actually this turned out to be just part one of a longer epic. We have not even reached Jankland yet. So we have many, many journeys yet to have. But I'm going to do a full read, as promised, here today, and then we will start driving the bus. The second movie is about kids on a school bus getting tormented by the Creeper, and according to the mythos of the Creeper, he is only awake every 23rd spring for 23 days. And since the first movie came out in 2001, his next cycle was spring 2024. Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm sorry. I wasn't going to get it. I didn't know the lore, but I like that. Dang, just a little short of 10K. There goes NaNoWriMo. I thought NaNoWriMo was 50K. Did they lower the benchmark? It used to be 50, I think, because I've done it a few times. All right, so I need to get started on this. So, Little Lionel's Quest 64, or the quest, the journey to save Jankland, Part 1. Cold, nothingness all around. I felt the immense enormity of potential, the gurgling bubble of something I had yet to understand. I knew not what awaited me. Only the potential of 4 transparent walls containing the essence of life, and some weird little fuckers clinging to the sides. High above, on the rim of the glass barriers between my brethren and the unknowable world beyond, sat a small little beefcake of a man in a white tank top, crooning through his tears. Drip, drip, plip, plop. One by one his tears descended down his grizzled cheeks to land on the dense disc. Bobsy, I'm reading. Hey, Natalia Dubrovsky. Sorry if I got that pronunciation wrong. Welcome in. I'm sorry. Thank you. That's what it's there for. How you doing? Thanks for following last night. Glad to have you. We're today, so we were doing Jankuary. We spent the whole month of January and first week of February playing janky games and just doing nonsense. And I had a bunch of goals set up for subs. And one of those, we had channel point redeems where during the stream at any point, someone could request me to write a fanfic and then could add things into the fanfic, and I've been writing it all month long. So today, we officially ended yesterday. I promised I would do one full read of the fanfic. It's quite long. It's going to take me a little bit. I have posted it. It is live here. Fanfic and Desert Bus. Hey, Pops, what's going on? How was your stream? I popped in for a second. I was busy, though, so I didn't say hi. But I love those sprites in Breath of Fire 3. You can go here and you can read this. It is publicly available now. I have no shame. But yeah, I'm going to do a full read, and then we're going to jump in Desert Bus. Today is an 8-hour marathon Desert Bus stream. I'm going to drive the bus. Your song requests will keep me sane, I hope. 1 Toto's Africa per customer, just as a reminder. Yeah, that's what we're doing here today. VOD for the ages. Very quiet VOD. Hey, Soft Talker Raider, what's going on? It's going to be muted. I think, I hope, if I did it right. Otherwise, I'm going to have a lot of copyright infractions at the end of the stream. They are so clean. Love the sprite work in the game. Yeah, I was liking it too. Oh, yeah, it is 50. I did that once over a 48-hour period. It was not fun. Did you really? That's insane. Good on you. All right, so I'm just going to, read as quickly as possible. One by one, his tears descended down his grizzled cheeks to land on the dense disk of carbs that was Lunchables, TM, pizza base. There, they hit the viscous slathering of marinara, turning it runny and dribbling through the porous breading to fall down into the increasingly salty and savory tank water below. I'm so excited. Can I turn on my permission slip now? You can go ahead and start queuing song requests. It'll hold them. Like, everyone in here, if you want to listen to something, once we start driving the bus, I'll open it up, but you can go ahead and start queuing them up. It's just exclamation point, SR, space, YouTube link. Had to beg my parents to sign it. Yeah, what did your parents, how'd they feel? The door side of the tank slammed open, and in waddled little Lionel Jumblebrains, here to replenish his squirt repository. He waddled over to the side of the tank, dipping his gag piping down into the red-tinged and slightly salty water within the Seaman tank, pulling out just enough fluid to go for another violent bout of battles around Toontown. He turned to leave, looking back over his adorable squat little shoulder at the strange alien display within the aquarium. He didn't quite understand what he was observing, but the strange but compelling potential of life filled him with newfound energy and purpose to achieve his goals. Unfortunately, on his way out of the room, a cruel community member's maliciously and purposely placed banana peel caused him to slip and fall, failing his task before even having a chance to attempt it. In that moment, time stopped. Lionel felt something awaken within himself, a latent power coursing in his cells, pulsing through his bloodstream, floating his bone marrow, awakening all of the organs within his little duck body. He realized it had always been there, simply waiting for the circumstances, the trauma of a shock to his system, to bring it out into the open, to make it accessible. His insides were a jet engine engaging, all systems coming online, ready to respond. As his flailing appendages and descending body neared the floor, he perceived what it was. A controllable magnetism, a push and pull that he could direct to guide him through the physical space at breakneck speed. They were apprehensive about an 8-hour trip, but then I mentioned we end in Vegas, and they said, hell yeah. Right on. It was so natural, like moving one's arms or breathing, something innate that had always been there, waiting for him to realize he had control of it. He felt its existence at the edge of his perception, and he reached out and grasped it. Lionel farted. It was like descending in an airplane rapidly, turbulence throwing the aircraft thousands of feet downwards in a sudden loss of control. Lionel burst up into the air and directly through the ceiling of the Seaman room, leaving a hilarious tune-shaped hole in the roof where he went through. Gah! Lionel hollered, flailing as he soared upward and outward in a wild, disorienting spin. Frantically, Lionel searched within himself, desperately seeking the origin point and mechanism of control for the newly found source of power that had just propelled him up into the sky. Another round of flatulence burst from him, and he felt a series of pops, like squeezing a wad of bubble wrap in your fist. Suddenly, floating all around him in the sky, 17 jars of relish appeared alongside an ear-splitting screech that reverberated out into the cosmos, like the scream of an entire pantheon of gods, driving off the precipice and out of existence like Thelma and Louise gunning off into oblivion. Lionel reached out to grab one of the jars. Ow! It was boiling hot to the touch. Lionel recoiled, jamming his little burned duck fingers into his mouth as a solve to the pain, almost forgetting that he was careening through the air hundreds of feet above the ground. Little Lionel, in a sudden burst of inspiration fueled by a complete misunderstanding of physics, roundhouse kicked all 17 jars of boiling relish down to the ground below. Crash! Smash! Bash! Scrash! They each exploded into wet, chunky shards on the pavement as he plummeted down towards the glimmering, relishy puddle below. As he neared, he felt a warm blast of a sudden updraft from all the hyperheated relish that buoyed him up and allowed him to gently descend down to a slight and safe alighting on the pavement just outside the hot, jagged danger zone. Ksh! Lionel glanced over at where the smashed jars of relish had landed. The puddle of relish burbled and gurgled and continued to hiss with billowing steam. Lionel realized that the relish was eating away at the pavement like an acid, melting it down into a corrosive, tarry slime. He stepped back as a geyser of steam burst from the hot molasses-like pool. It glimmered and cast a blinding prism of colors. He squinted and realized it was a CD-ROM, rising up out of the melted tar. "Australia is wider than the moon," said the CD-ROM in a tinny yet avuncular, robotic voice issued from somewhere within the coruscating bands of color glimmering on its underside. Lionel stepped back. Did you just speak?" Lionel asked in surprise. The CD-ROM looked at him questioningly. "Dude, you're from Toontown. Are you actually surprised by a talking CD?" Lionel took a moment to think. "I guess not, though. Even in Toontown, usually we put you in the CD drive first." "Lionel," said the CD, "my name is Encarta. I am here on an important mission. Our realm of Jankland is in deep, deep trouble. It has been overrun with bad takes, like Castlevania 64 is a bad game. We don't know where these takes are coming from. They must be from people who have not played Castlevania 64. We need you to use your toon powers to close the bad take portal and save Jankland from becoming overrun with the toxic takes." "But," Lionel stammered, "I'm just a regular old toon. I don't have that many gags at my disposal. I'm running around with like a level 1 squirt and a couple of pies. What can I do?" Encarta stepped towards Lionel and patted his little duck shoulder supportively. "You got a heart, kid. And smarts. I saw how you dealt with that last situation with all the boiling relish up in the sky. I know you're the right toon for the job." "Yeah, that's the command. So go ahead, anyone, feel free to start queuing song requests, and then I'll start playing them as soon as we're done reading." With that, Encarta snapped his little white... "Hey, what's up, Chloe? What's going on? Thanks for coming. How you doing?" Encarta snapped his little white gloved fingers, and out of the relish tar molasses puddle hopped a rare piano tuna fish. We're just doing one full read of the fanfic. It is now posted. It is live. You can read it here. You can reread it as many times as you want. It'll be there forever. Share it with your friends. Tell your family. The word, we're getting it out. Part 1, The Journey to Save Jankland. It's out there for all to enjoy. One full read, and then we start the desert bus. "Hop on, Lionel," said the fish cheerfully. "I'll take you right to Jankland." Lionel looked from Encarta to the fish. This was all happening so suddenly. Was he really the right toon for the job? He'd never even left Toontown before. His quest so far had mostly just involved riding trolleys, fishing, collecting beans, and fucking around. What business did he have saving an entire kingdom from an existential threat? And then again, he really didn't have anything else going on that afternoon. So he hopped onto the fish's back, grabbed a couple of scales, and braced for takeoff. I'm so glad I'll be making it for the trip, at least the last couple hours. Are you heading to work? Thanks for popping in, though, to say hello. Beautiful work of art. When does it go on AO3? Now. I just saw a link. It's there. That's why I'm starting 10 minutes late. I was doing that. Behind him, Lionel heard the sound of engines engaging and mechanical components shifting and grinding into place. He looked to see Encarta breaking into segmented modular blocks of CD-ROM appendages. At the same time, he heard an approaching and turned to see Scott Stapp trotting up, hair billowing out behind him as he dove forward and fused with the openings in the transforming Encarta to form one singular mechanical butt rock hybrid. With that, it was liftoff. The rare piano tuna fish tensed up, seeming to draw in surrounding energy from the still boiling relish puddle and turning it into kinetic force. Reality bent inwards around Lionel as the air grew weebly and wobbly. And before he could even mouth the words, "Should I?" they blasted up into the sky and threw a tear in reality. It was like pulling the plug from a full warm bubble bath, the bloop of sudden suction and cyclone of sudsy bathwater twirling down the drain. But Lionel was the tub, and also the bathwater, and also the plug. It was a weird feeling. Yeah, it's good to go. Feel free to start queuing them up. Have we seen any? I haven't seen any come in yet. Oh, wait, yeah. But yeah, feel free to go for it. I just got it paused until we've done the read. Just like that, they were out into the infinite cosmos, somewhere within a glorious, luminescent pillar of stardust, the kind of interstellar majesty that only exists in the finest, most software-enhanced NASA photographs. Yeah, thanks for getting it started. Bleeping and blooping and idling off to the right, Lionel saw a massive, elaborate, strangely avian starship gleaming with seemingly purposeless appendages, overly contrived and unnecessarily elaborate adornments, and exuding the perceivable weight of prophetic vision. It was the SS Hideo Kojima, a ship that had traveled the length of the cosmos, there and back again, returned to offer visions of potential futures, warnings about existing presents, and a continuing reminder to use the action button. Suddenly, from the top and sides of the ship, several long, wiggling chrome appendages careened towards Lionel and the fish, snatching them with long, segmented, and dexterous fingers, and pulling them swiftly towards the back cargo doors of the ship, which swooshed open to receive them. Hey, Pure Ire, what's going on? How are you? Thanks for coming in. Hope you're having a good day. The robotic hands tossed them in, and they tumbled into a massive cargo hold full of crates and pallets and lots of parcels, waiting to be delivered by the right carrier, preferably someone resembling Norman Reedus. As Lionel came to a rolling stop, he eased himself up to find a makeshift bar made of random cargo hold components on the other side of the space. Turning around on a set of rickety, cobbled-together stools, a few figures drinking at the bar sized him up, one by one, as he looked down the line of immediately annoying and insufferable personalities. He was greeted, one by one, with a series of quips, each worse than the last. "It's tail time," said the first. "Gravy," said the second. "Hail to the king," said the third. Lionel looked at the last speaker, flexing in his, "Hey, drink some water, what's going on?" We're doing a full read of the fanfic. We finished it officially, part 1, anyway, last night. It is now live here. You can go and enjoy it anytime you like it. That link, it is on AO3 for all to enjoy. One full read, and then we start the Desert Bus. But thanks for coming in. How you doing? Lionel looked at the last speaker, flexing in his red tank top and tight-fitting blue jeans. The man eyed him over the tops of his badass sunglasses. "My boot, your face, the perfect couple." Lionel stepped back in intimidation. The man was just too cool. He didn't know how to respond. He looked down the line of other, friendlier faces at the bar. Behind him, Lionel heard a skidding crash. He turned to see Scott Stapp and Encarta, who had taken off just behind Lionel, smash into a messy landing in the cargo hold. Scott stood up, dusted himself off, and immediately raised his eyebrows in pleased surprise at the bar. He trotted over to the last open stool, muttering his own band's lyrics to himself all the way there, and helped himself to a cold brewski out of the cooler at Duke's feet. Lionel noticed Duke's eyes go wide behind his shades with annoyance at this brazen action. But as he opened his mouth in protest, Scott let out a long and immense fart that reverberated through the entire cargo hold, echoing from every cold, hard metallic surface and amplified by the random junk and machinery strewn about the space. Duke shook his head, took a swig from his beer. "Your face, your ass, what's the difference?" I thought that was an actual voice clip of Duke. What the hell? I'm doing it. I'm beginning to believe. Hey, Cathedral, what's going on? Thanks for listening. Appreciate you. What's the name on AO3? You can just use this link. It'll take you right there, right? Is that the right link? But it's Lil Lionel's Quest 64 or The Journey to Save Jankland. Scott Stapp cracked open the beer he had just stolen out of Duke's cooler. He took a sip and wiped his lips on his tattooed forearm. Without missing a beat, he encountered, "Bud, I've got 2 arms wide open, and they're both capable of beating your ass." Duke was left speechless as he visibly searched for a retort. Scott leaned back in smug, self-satisfied victory, setting the can of beer on the makeshift bar and stretching his arms back behind his head, showing off his armpits to everyone assembled at the bar. That's the wrong link you meant this one. I don't know. That's yesterday. We're moving forward. We're not going to think about that ever again. Nope. Lionel found himself visually arrested by the tight, lean, muscled contours containing the valley of his left armpit. That valley was damp, humid, with no cross breeze able to breach the interior and air out the stagnant, sweaty pit. It was like Middle Tennessee in late July. Lionel looked into the wet nest of pit hair, and it seemed to spiral out into infinite fractals before his eyes, increasing in complexity as it collapsed into itself and birthed another infinite spiral, again and again, endlessly. Minutes passed, maybe hours, or maybe time stopped altogether. And then, somewhere within the coursing, writhing collection of shapes and abstract forms, he saw the impressions of others' faces. Mark, Brian, and of course, Scott, the other one. Somewhere outside of Lionel's DMT trip into the intricate infinity of Scott Stapp's armpit, Duke regained his composure and shot back, "I've got something that'll take you higher. My boot in your ass." With that, he knocked back the rest of his beer, tossed it over his shoulder, reared back, and drop-kicked Scott Stapp right off his bar stool. Scott flew across the low-gravity cargo hold, smashing into a panel of flashing buttons and intricate levers. It was the finite probability park, and it immediately engaged and began to spit out multicolored smoke and sparks. From somewhere within the plume, there came a "Hi!" and out stepped an avuncular grinning figure with perfectly trimmed, shoe-polished black beard and pressed blue button-down shirt. Protruding from his sleeves were two thick forearms lathered up, sporting smooth strips of pink skin where they were newly half-shaved. "Billy Mays here. Folks, if you're anything like me, you just can't have enough BBQ coleslaw on that paper plate. I'm always running out of space for pulled pork sammies and baked beans because that coleslaw is soaking through my whole dang paper plate. Well, have I got the product for you. Dixie Plate Gutters. With a simple 15-minute installation by one of our trained professionals, in no time at all, that puddle of slaw juice will be siphoned off to the side and down our 57% biodegradable plate gutters that reroute to our patented collection device that conveniently attaches to most propane grills. Then it's a simple phone call to our slaw collection facility, who for a nominal fee will come drain your slaw tank and ship that juice off to our recycling facility where it will get put to use as an energy source in one of the cities that have signed up for our experimental energy programs." Just as Lionel was about to pose a question in response, Billy Mays continued, "But wait, there's more." He smiled, holding up a flimsy, soggy paper plate with the visage of the Mona Lisa barely perceptible within it, like she was colored in heavy wax crayon, and then that crayon drawing was half melted while held vertically over a fire pit burning lithium batteries. "If you sign up for our monthly payment plan, we'll throw in magic slaw art placemats. Just set your soggy paper plate over one of our patented placemats, and the image below will magically bleed up and through the wet paper and appear before your eyes." Scott Stapp rose up from where he had collapsed, gingerly touching at an already red and swelling nose from where he had collided face first with the machine. "Is it just fine art, Billy Mays? I don't have that much interest in classical art, but some contemporary artistic pieces like album art? Now that might convince me to become a paying customer." "You better believe it," Billy Mays exclaimed. "We just launched our 3rd edition of album art placemat upgrade sets. We've got a limited edition Wiggle set going on sale next Thursday." "Oh shit," Duke chimed in, rising from his bar stool. "I fucking love the Wiggles." Scott Stapp nodded along. "They were one of my biggest musical inspirations when I started Creed. I like to think of human clay as a love letter to fruit salad." "Oh-ho-ho," he added. "Say," said Billy Mays, "I just teleported all the way here from Florida, United States of America, the Sunshine State, birthplace of Gatorade, and home to many actual gators. That said, I'm pretty parched, fellas. What does a guy gotta say to get a bev in this place?" "Gravy," said Bubsy, perking up. "No, I just had a pint on the way over," said Billy Mays, "though I appreciate the limited time offer." "I can get you something," said Lionel, but he stopped short as he turned around. The others saw this abrupt motion and turned to look at what had caught Lionel's attention. Behind them, Duke Nukem was naked from the waist down, blue jeans down around his ankles, ass deep into a giant clear plastic punch bowl full of lightly carbonated red-orange punch with various slices of citrus fruit floating in it. "Not now, Duke," whispered Gex. "It's not that tail time." There was a burbling gurgle from the punch bowl. "I'll blow you a new hole," he threatened, setting the now more heavily carbonated punch bowl in front of him and digging a ladle out of his jeans pocket before pulling his pants back up. Duke dug into one of the interior pockets of his faded brown duster and retrieved a slightly crumpled paper cup and offered it to Billy, who raised his eyebrows and looked from Duke to the still bubbling punch. "You know, on second thought," he said, "I'm actually not that thirsty after all." Behind Billy Mays, the still open portal swirled with coalescing plumes of vibrantly colored stardust spinning out into the vast cosmos beyond. From somewhere within the portal, the assembled party heard a familiar light percussive introduction. They immediately recognized the rhythm. How could you not? It was one of mankind's greatest musical endeavors. When the first notes hit, they sounded as if they were being played on a child's toy xylophone, yet magnified to a volume that seemed to reverberate throughout the cargo hold and on through the entire ship. One by one, everyone started to move. For Lionel, it was a light tapping of his little duck foot in rhythm to the beat. Gex responded with a metronome-like swishing of his tail. Truly, it was tail time. Duke was a little more reticent and tried to hide it, but anyone paying attention could see the movement of his jacket revealing the rhythmic flexing and unflexing of his pectoral muscles on the downbeat. I flexed the pecs, down in Africa. Gradually, measure by measure, Duke's defenses wore down. The tune was just too good to deny. What began as pectoral flexing spread into his shoulders, his arms, his hips and feet, and soon he was full-on dancing. The others fell in behind, and soon enough it was a cargo hold conga line. A cargo line, if you will. But you shouldn't. Somewhere near minute 4, the group was called out of their musical stupor by Billy Mays standing in the middle of the conga line, exuding his wizard-like magical abilities of commerce. He held up a copy of Tron on DVD high above his head. "Have I got an offer for you? For just one quick payment of ceasing to dance, this viewing experience could be yours." Before anyone could respond, the entire party was thrown forward and stumbled into various piles of junk and freight in the hold. The ship had come to a sudden and jarring stop in some port. From outside the ship came the tinny, garbled voice of a drive-through speaker.
"Welcome to Applebee's of Delaware."
"Where?"
asked Duke. "Yeah, Delaware," said Lionel.
"Which is where?"
"You're there," said Billy Mays.
"Where?"
asked Duke again. "Delaware," said Lionel again.
"That's what I asked." Duke was getting annoyed. "Where is it?"
"Delaware, yeah," said Scott Stapp. "Gravy," said Bubsy. It was at that moment that they all looked at one another and realized this had gone on long enough. "Now that all that is, thankfully, over," chimed in Encarta, who everyone had sort of completely forgotten about, "I'd like to alert us all to the reason we're here. Saving the kingdom of Jankland is an enormous task, and even with our abilities combined, we will require the power of several magical objects and powerful relics from around the universe. The first one is right here inside this delicious chain restaurant, hidden amongst the reasonably priced appetizers, the fun spins on old favorites, and a few unique fusions only available here. That object is the Ocarina of Time, and we must get to it before the adversary does."
"Who's this adversary?" Duke grunted, already unholstering his firearm. "Point me in his direction, and you can consider that ass kicked."
Encarta shook its head, or at least moved in whatever way a CD-ROM could that would appear to communicate the same gesture. "We don't know. They have yet to reveal themselves. Somewhere in my vast databanks there is an encyclopedia article that explains it in full, but I've never read it, and I can't tell you the last time I saw a CD drive that I could even pop myself into in order to find out." At that moment, they heard the revving of an engine. Something sounded like it was whizzing by outside the cargo hold, followed by another and another. The buzzing sounds grew in intensity. Duke once again unholstered his weapon, or at least he started to. Then he realized he was already holding his gun, so he holstered it and then unholstered it again, dramatically. Gex turned to look at him. "Is it tail time?" Duke inhaled a long drag from his cigar.
"If you mean kicking tail time."
Suddenly, the engines grew to a deafening roar, and the cargo bay doors exploded inward in a tidal wave of sparks and smoke and pieces of jagged metal, and within it all, a pack of flying, space-faring jet skis for air. What are those?" yelled Billy Mays above the chaotic cacophony.
"I don't know," said Duke, "but they're pretty badass. They were obviously invented by someone pretty cool and creative. Definitely not a child's creations."
Crash! Slam! Vroom! The party all jumped back in surprise. All the sound effects were appearing, an enormous Comic Sans font in the air all around them, some in angular orange sound effect bubbles. And throughout it all, a warping of the air with the faint echoes of text, like it was all overlaid over the reality on a higher layer with the opacity turned down to 20%. And that text was also Comic Sans. The pack of flying space jet skis hovered in front of the group, idling in the smoky air. Sparks burst from various broken machinery and damaged control terminals. The leader of the jet ski pack flipped acrobatically down from the jet ski and crossed their arms over their chest. They were outfitted in a sleek spandex spacesuit with the glimmering embossed apple on their chest, front and center. It seemed to emanate with some barely perceivable force. It wasn't exactly visually perceptible, just the feeling that this thing contained some strange allure for vast numbers of people. It inexplicably continued to earn their patronage without really seeming to make a case as to why. The figure tensed up and suddenly reached for a blaster holstered on its gleaming chrome utility belt, but before they could even reach it, thwack! A DVD smacked right into the tinted front visor on their sleek helmet.
"Hey, what the?"
A muffled voice from inside the helmet exclaimed. It turned towards the source of the projectile. Smack! A DVD case cracked into the same spot on the visor. There was a hairline fracture there now. "There's 3 more monthly payments of $19.95 where that came from," yelled Billy Mays, stepping forward aggressively. The leader of the jet ski pack backed up, raising his arms with palms out in concession to having been bested in combat.
Okay.
He started moving back towards his idling jet ski.
"I know when the odds aren't in my favor. There are 5 of us and 7 of you, and one of you is a Duke Nukem."
He looked towards Duke, who was once again rhythmically flexing his pectorals and looking down at his own chest as he hummed to himself.
It's a girl thing,
He hummed and muttered under his breath, watching the bulges under his red tank top go left, right, left, right.
Ain't nothing stopping us.
The antagonistic space jet ski riders all revved up their various engines and rocketed back out into space, through the big gaping hole in the cargo hold where they had crashed in. Bubsy looked at the enormous crater, looking out into the vacuum of space. Hey, hold on, he said, turning back to the others. There's no barrier between us and that, right? Everyone looked at one another. Duke squinted.
I flunked science.
Scott Stapp nodded in agreement.
I skipped my entire senior year to go write lyrics under the bleachers in the gymnasium.
Lionel looked out from within the piece of prose at the author, writing the words you're now reading. Did you just realize that we all should have been sucked out into space minutes ago? The author looked at the page. It was too late to go back. The only solution was to forge ahead. It was at that moment that the entire party got sucked out into the vacuum of space. Lionel flailed around as he spun amongst a bunch of random debris and freight sucked from the cargo hold. He looked at the other gasping members of the party, also frantically flailing about and gasping. He realized the enormity of the conflict. In the endless vacuum of space, no one could hear you quip. It was then that they heard the drowning, choking choir. It was like the sound of a wet, clammy foot raw dogging a rubber galosh, or the sound your teeth make when you rub them together after drinking a sunny delight. Incessant grating squeaking, digging at their eardrums, permeating their bones, making their skin crawl. Lionel looked to see the source of the sound. Beyond the detritus, drifting about the party, he saw the encroaching source of the noise. In every direction, penguins.
Shit, yelled Duke Nukem. They're coming right for us.
And they look hungry, added Bubsy. What do we do? Lionel asked frantically. Should I distract them with some mail-order hamburger patties? Asked Billy Mays. If you sign up for monthly shipments, we add 10 free patties to the order.
Wait, said Scott Stapp. We're right in front of an ambulance.
He gestured toward the front of the brick building, floating a few hundred yards from the exploding ship. Great idea! Encarta snapped its white-gloved fingers. There's got to be enough delicious, reasonably priced sliders to distract them. Suddenly, the generic faux brick facade of Applebee's began to transform before their eyes. The previously proportional, normal-sized windows of the front facade grew to double their former size, appearing very large compared to the rest of the face. It was really cute. The roof began to spike like an untamed bedhead hairdo, turning bright lime green. The sign above the front entryway lengthened, and what had said Applebee's now read Ningohachi-chan or Applebee-chan. What's happening? Lionel exclaimed. It must be the ruptured multiversal awareness drive on the Hideo Kojima, explained Encarta. As the ship breaks down and the machinery starts to malfunction, some of that machinery that allows the ship to travel between dimensions and navigate wormholes is tearing holes in the fabric between these realities. We're seeing another universe where Applebee's is super cute and sentient, and the power of that Applebee's is stronger than the generic chain restaurant concept that is our timeline's Applebee's. When one comes into contact with another version of itself from out in the multiverse, we get a paradox. Both cannot exist within the same reality. It's survival of the fittest, or in this case, the kawaiiest. The stronger or cuter entity overwrites the weaker one, and so we're left with Ningohachi-chan. It's simple astrophysics. Wait a second, said Lionel. We're all currently out in the vacuum of space. Yes, said Encarta. Without spacesuits, continued Lionel. Yes, answered Encarta. How are we? Why are we? Like I just explained, Encarta interrupted. When we have conflicts between multiple realities, the stronger reality overwrites the weaker. Somewhere out there in the multiverse, there is a version of our fanfic's writer who has baseline fiction writing ability and can avoid such continuity errors. Lionel looked down and realized he was now in a spacesuit. A really cool one, in fire engine red, with lots of buttons and retrofuturism-style adornments, and even a big spiral radio antenna protruding from the top of the helmet. He looked great! Hello, and welcome, said a calm, slightly monotone, and yet warm and inviting voice from somewhere within the tear between dimensions. Thank you for coming back so soon. It seems your writing schedule is quite erratic. I hope the fanfic isn't interfering with your daily life. Who's speaking now? Lionel exclaimed. The voice continued undeterred. It seems your protagonists are suffering from the cold. Please raise the temperature in their solar system. A second sun appeared, off in the distance, and space seemed to warm slightly. It seems your antagonist needs a name. Please use the microphone to speak to the antagonist and say, I will give you a name. Then, perhaps the narrative will finally begin to cohere. Hold on, said yet another voice from somewhere out beyond the end of the cosmos. Let me run a poll real quick. Who is that? Exclaimed Lionel, even louder. My, Leonard Nimoy said. This fourth wall break is expanding rapidly. Now we're hearing from the author himself. Okay, chat voted, said the streamer/author. Dick Dale. Dick Dale is our antagonist. The guy with the colon? From the Gex quip? Asked Lionel. Here's Gexy. Quipped Gex. Gravy, quipped Bubsy.
Blow it out your ass, quipped Duke.
Great, said Encarta. Now you've got them all quipping. You realize they're like dogs barking, right? One starts in the yard 2 houses over, and suddenly the whole neighborhood is a cacophony of noise.
Dick Dale, Scott Stapp chimed in. The legendary surf guitarist? He's one of Mark's biggest inspirations.
Encarta made a fist and smacked it into the awaiting open palm of its other hand in a gesture of excited and aggressively hopeful resolve. Well then, let's get that dick. First things first, though, said Billy Mays, looking over his shoulder and then jabbing a thumb at what he saw there. I believe we have 3 monthly payments worth of uncombated hench penguins rocketing our way. The party all turned to look at a black and white flood of adorable little penguins, all appearing to slide on their bellies through open space towards them. Damn it, I was hoping it would have aligned perfectly. It was a valiant effort. Good attempt. Basically there. God, this thing is so fucking long.
Well then, said Duke, unholstering 2 pistols and raising them in preparation. Nobody steals our chicks and lives.
What chicks? Questioned Lionel. They all felt a massive shift in energy. They looked over to the giant, increasingly anthropomorphized sentient Applebee's, now turned increasingly kawaii Ringo Hachichan, with big adorable eyes, spiky green hair, and a look of embarrassed infatuation. It took one look at Duke's hot bod and immediately got a nosebleed, which in this case meant an enormous wave of blood pouring out of the front doors of the restaurant like the elevator in The Shining. That's our opening, cried Encarta, waving its arms. The relic of power is inside. We need that ocarina of time to get to Jankland.
I'm on it,
Duke said, holstering his firearms so he could unholster them dramatically.
Wait, said Scott Stapp. We need you to fend off those penguins. They'll be here any second, and there's so many, it looks like 1,000 faces. If we don't hide, we'll be torn, say I. So, to whom it may concern, who's got my back? Stand here with me, with your bullets, in my own prison. Be my sacrifice, and don't stop dancing. It's time.
Wait, said Lionel. What if you used your musical gifts to distract the penguins? Yeah, Encarta brightened up, snapping his fingers. Like the Pied Piper. Use that beautiful voice to draw them to you. Take them higher, and lead them away. I fried 2 slices of Spam, sliced up a cabbage, and made a full sandwich since you started. You will have time to consume it all and have a dessert and maybe, I don't know, have a nice walk to just like help settle your stomach after all that. And I'll probably still be going. I have actual butterflies. It's been a minute since I've been this giddy. Scott Stapp took a deep breath.
This is what I was born for. This is his plan for me. I always knew my musical gifts would serve a greater purpose. I just wasn't sure when and how. He took a deeper breath. Hello, my friend, he belted out and jumped away from the party, casting his body out into frictionless space. We meet again.
He hit the thrusters on his undershirt spacesuit and sped farther away, belting out the rest of the lyrics to one of his hit songs. The pack of penguins turned to follow him as he led them off and away from his comrades. Okay, Encarta turned to Duke Nukem. This is your chance. Get in that Applebee's. The anthropomorphized Applebee's seemed to wink at Duke and his intentions. He took a breath, tensed up, and launched himself towards the open front doors that still trickled residual blood from the nosebleed. Inertia took him in with one clean dive forward, but as he sailed through the entryway, he realized he was heading right for a table loaded up with an eclectic mix of reasonably priced appetizers. He threw his arms out in front of himself, but it was too late. He got a face full of delicious sliders before he even had a chance to say one of his many stolen catchphrases, and crashed into a booth at the back of the restaurant.
So, you finally come. The Ibris Tropa, the one who will destroy this universe. You're mine.
Duke heaved himself up, picking the cheesy bacon bits from a plate full of loaded potato skins out of his nose, and flicked them to the floor.
Who is it?
He looked at the spiky-haired, wide-eyed, immediately off-putting, bright orange humanoid otter in front of him. He was about 3'6", and stood in a battle stance atop the bar, brandishing chili dog sliders in either hand.
Nice hair,
said the otter through a mouthful of chili dog.
You're one to talk,
replied Duke. The otter stopped chewing. That wasn't sarcasm. I really think you look like a really cool guy.
Unfortunately,
he popped another chili dog slider in his mouth and started chewing again. I have to kill you now.
You can try,
Duke said, pulling out one of his handguns. Smack! The gun was knocked out of his hand and went skittering across the floor. Duke turned to see a large bat creature flying past from where it had just collided with his arm. It continued gliding through the room and alighted on the bar next to the otter. Here you go, baby, she said, dropping the firearm into the otter's open hand.
Thanks, Rouge,
the otter smiled. Duke instinctually grabbed at his left holster and started. It was empty. She had disarmed him. But when? And how?
Not so tough now, are you, Duke?
The otter chuckled smugly.
I'm going to kill you right here in this shitty little anthropomorphized, overly kawaii restaurant. And then I'm going to head outside and kill all your friends. None of you will reach Jinkland. Behold, I am Waves, the otter, first of the 4 horsemen of the Jinkopolis.
Waves cocked the gun and pointed it at Duke.
Any last words?
Duke gritted his teeth at the smug, cartoonish smile.
Yeah.
He pulled a cigar from his right jeans pocket, lit it, and exhaled a big, badass cloud of smoke.
Shake it, baby.
He flicked the cigar into the air towards Waves and Rouge, then flipped forward at super speed over the arcing cigar, diving past a dumbfounded Waves and landing behind the bar. He grabbed a bottle of absinthe and tossed it towards the incoming cigar. He slid out the little .38 special he kept tucked in his back waistband for emergencies and fired at the bottle of absinthe. It exploded in the air just as the cigar finally reached its destination above Waves and Rouge. The embers of the cigar hit the high-proof alcohol and exploded in a fiery rain that descended down upon the two characters. Ah! They both screamed, violently thrashing about as they melted down into puddles of vibrantly colored slime, like a handful of crayons held under a blowtorch.
I'm melting!
The screams died into a guttural gurgle as the white-gloved hand of Waves flailed out from the steaming, simmering puddle of orange innards and gore. Duke pulled out another cigar and lit it.
It's good to be king.
Suddenly, a blinding white light burst from the still bubbling puddles of otter and sexy bat goo. Rising out from the steaming sludge was a figure, sitting cross-legged, with hands placed gently on either knee, in an erect but relaxed posture. He smiled broadly and looked at Duke with a constant and unsettling stare. He barely blinked. He did not move. The smile never wavered, and aside from some very slight adjustments in his sitting posture, he did not move. Well, that's just bad writing. Okay, but he did not move. But he didn't move, though. Duke, never one to lose a challenge, simply stared back. This continued for the next 4 hours. At a certain point, the smiling man simply dropped his smile and leaned forward. The now still and cooled puddle of otter and bat goop began to shine with coruscating bands of light. 2 ghostly figures rose from the floor, and Duke perceived the visage of an otter, still smiling smugly, and a bat with a smoldering expression. With eyes glistening like brown rope, he furrowed his brow and opened his mouth into a vast abyssal maw. It was unnervingly wide and deep, like he had unhinged his jaw for the purpose of widening the orifice. The room filled with an eerie howl that reverberated around the space. The dead-eyed, smiling man emitted a horrifying, screeching gasp, like some eldritch horror screaming from beyond the veil, and sucked in the 2 souls. In the last moments before Waves was consumed by the man, Duke saw the agonized expression of the otter desperately look out from the wispy fog as it was sucked down the man's throat. "It's tail time," said a familiar voice from behind Duke. "Wait, did somebody die out there?" came another shrill voice. "I'm also here," exclaimed Lionel. Duke turned to find Gex and Bubsy trotting in through the front doors of the Applebee's, guns in hand. A gasping Lionel trotted up just behind, leaning down to rest his little duck elbows on his knees and catch his breath.
You're a little late,
Duke said, resting his hand on his hip. Suddenly, Duke pulled something out from his pocket. It appeared to be a stuffed animal, a possum to be exact.
Well, Lionel, get sucking,
commanded Duke. Slurp! The stuffed animal was snatched out of Duke's hand. He turned to see Gex swallowing it in one gulp. Slip of the tongue, he smirked. Just as quickly, Gex's eyes went wide with surprise. His belly began to expand. His torso lengthened. His legs grew wider and thicker. His forearms shortened, and his body grew to an enormous size that began to tower over the others. His head crashed up through the Applebee's ceiling, showering the others with bits of plaster and dust. Damn it, Gex! Damn it, Gex! Thanks, Bob.
It's tail time,
roared the massive Gex, who now resembled a T-Rex. A T-Gex, if you will. The sitting and smiling man closed his massive maw and returned to his blank-faced smile. He turned ever so slightly to look at Gex, then closed his eyes gently. A power began to emanate from the man, and the air around him began to warp. He started to grow in size, first gradually, then more rapidly. The chairs around were knocked over and clattered down to the floor. The heavy tables began to grind along the tiled floor as they were pushed backwards by his growing body. Glasses smashed, silverware crashed, and Duke and Bubsy both had to step back to get some distance from the giant man, who was now crashing through the ceiling directly in front of T-Gex. Gex reared back and roundhouse kicked the sitting and smiling man. Kicks were really all he had at his disposal, what with the little Tyrannosaurus arms. A sonic boom blew through the Applebee's, and the waves of force threw Duke back over the bar and into the mirrored wall behind, crashing into the shelves of bottles and bringing everything down to the floor in a chaotic explosion of glass and booze. He shook himself and winced as he picked a shard of glass from his forehead. It immediately began to spurt blood, and he wiped it from his eye and looked for something to staunch the bleeding. He found it. He found a dirty bar rag and held it against the wound, then stood to watch the kaiju battle before him unfold. Ahead, the enormous T-Gex continued to wail on the sitting and smiling man, who continued to smile and remain stationary, seemingly unfazed by the incoming barrage of blows. It was the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. The battle continued for what could have been minutes, maybe hours. The waves of force continued to blast out from the two, breaking apart furniture and walls, and demolishing what was left of the Applebee's. Duke ducked as a full booth went sailing over his head and through the wall, creating an enormous hole leading out to the exterior of the restaurant, which was still open space. We're having an earthquake right now, which just like really nicely emphasizes all of the chaos within the story. Just a little guy. That's when he saw it. Out amongst the stars, a figure in a white undershirt, sailing towards the newly formed opening in the wall, hair billowing out behind. It was Scott Stapp, and he was no longer singing. Hide! Behind him, the army of penguins he had attempted to Pied Piper away was stampeding towards the opening as well. They'd all be there any moment. Duke leaped behind the bar, frantically searching for a bottle that hadn't been broken in the chaos of the battles. Finding a nearly full bottle of bourbon, he unscrewed the cap and pulled the dirty bar rag from his face, dunking it into the amber liquid within. He stood up just as Scott Stapp and the avian army following him burst into the restaurant.
I'm gonna roast your nuts over an open fire, you flaming alien bitch.
Duke exchanged a look with the fleeing Scott Stapp, who nodded in understanding and dove behind some upended furniture. With that, Duke threw the Molotov, and all hell broke loose. What was left of the interior exploded into a barrage of table legs, broken glass, and penguin guts. Blood and gore showered Duke and everything around him in bloody red chunks. Across the room, a piece of shrapnel hit the jukebox just right and queued up a request. Beyond the cacophony of noise, a singer began to croon. Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. Duke wiped the penguin out of his eyes and tried to blink away the blood. He looked up at the kaiju battle and grunted in displeasure. Gex was getting wrecked. Somehow, without seeming to have moved at all, the sitting, smiling man had pinned Gex to the floor and was now sitting and smiling on top of him. I choose to believe earthquakes are caused by the Titans being chained in Tartarus. What myth do you subscribe to, if you do? Let's say some like Lovecraftian eldritch horror that is like they tunneled deep down underground like a century or two ago, They used to be humanoid in appearance, but they have changed, gotten stranger, more horrifying with each passing year. And they're tunneling about, coursing just below us, waiting to emerge. And what we're feeling are them rupturing into, like, you know, they are the ones disturbing the tectonic plates. Lovecraftian horror like Gex, kind of like that. That's so cool. Sorry, Terrell. No, there's actually, I'm thinking of a very, I don't know. Have you read much Lovecraft? What is the story I'm thinking of? There's one about, like, these creatures that have, like, tunneled all under the ground. It's like this kind of, like, inbred, like, nobility kind of class that are kind of, like, sheltered up in, like, the mountains. And, like, the offspring have all, like, gone underground. There's some fucking amazing scenes. There's, like, one scene where someone's, like, standing guard at the window. And, like, he's been watching all night, you know, and he hasn't moved in a while. And they go up and, like, they pull him away, and, like, his face is ripped off. And it's a badass story. But I'm just like, is it the lurking horror? I can't remember. But it's a good one. Anyway, back to my story, which is not good. Someone yell, cut. Gex gasped, barely able to summon the breath for the quip. Wait. So someone yell, cut. Gex gasped, barely able to summon the breath for the quip. The life was being squeezed out of him by the second. Little did he know that at that moment, the rest of the team was on their way. And then they were there. They had been moving pretty fast. Billy Mays and Encarta burst in through what remained of the front of the Applebee's, which was little more than a jagged fraction of a door hanging loosely from half a hinge. "Oh no, Gex!" screamed Encarta.
"It's," Gex choked out, "not tail time."
"We have to help him," Billy Mays pleaded. "Call in the next 5 minutes to take advantage of this limited time offer to save Gex's life." Everyone just sort of looked at one another. Bystander bias. You know how it is. Suddenly, they realized there was movement all around the restaurant. The blubbery chunks of exploded penguins were wiggling and jiggling and sliding along the floor towards one another. Where they met, they converged, forming larger pieces, beginning to combine into appendages and other recognizable parts of the penguin body. Duke ran to the bar to retrieve his stolen handgun from the still steaming puddles of melted waves and rouge. He aimed at the recompiling penguin corpse and was about to fire when Encarta gently pushed down on the barrel. Duke looked down at the CD.
"What is it?"
Encarta gestured towards the reanimated penguins. They seemed to be regaining their composure and were steadily, one by one, turning towards the party with menacing stares. Traditional firepower is obviously ineffective. They seem to be animated by some strange power emanating from Jankland. We're going to have to find another way to dispose of them. The deep ones? It might be that one. I'd have to go looking. I can't remember the name of the tale. It's not like the deep ones in terms of, like, those kind of, like, more like the godlike creatures. Like, they were human once. It's almost like the film The Descent kind of situation is what I'm remembering. It's been a very long time since I read it, but I remember really liking it. Repeat what you said. I haven't read much Lovecraft, but my best friend has, and he's here with me. Okay. It's a story about, like, the offspring of this kind of, like, inbred family that was, like, they were very wealthy, but, like, the manor and everything has fallen into disrepair, and they've, like, tunneled under the ground. They have these, like, interconnected tunnels that are, like, connecting to, like, the house, the manor, and, like, all these different places throughout the surrounding forest and mountains. And I'm trying to remember the name of the story. Anyway, that's what I was thinking of, but it's that kind of situation. Where was the reanimated penguin? The reanimated penguins were amassing on the other side of the destroyed interior of the restaurant. They were almost completely reformed and were beginning to make their way towards the party with predatory, menacing steps. The party collectively backed away from the encroaching creatures. Duke turned in surprise as his back thudded against the wall. There was nowhere to go. They were cornered. Scott Stapp looked from the penguins to the others. His expression of helpless terror, gradually calmed into one of resigned purpose. He clenched his jaw, drew in a breath, and turned to the others.
"I know now why I was chosen to join this party. Why I'm here. What he planned for me. I've got this one. Fight on in my honor. Save Jankland and the universe. I'll be cheering you all on from my place in his kingdom." The others opened their mouths to speak, but before they could, Scott Stapp waved their gestures away with a dismissive hand. "Consider this my sacrifice."
"Wait, Scott!" Lionel reached out towards Scott Stapp, but he was too slow. Scott was already sprinting off towards the giant kaiju sitting in Smiling Man, who was mere seconds away from crushing the last life out of Gex. Scott threw his arms wide open and took in a deep breath, appearing to pull in all the energy around him and channel it into his chest. His white space undershirt began to brown and curl into disintegrating tendrils, as if held over an open flame. Whoops. His skin began to glow with an inner fire that blew his hair out to billow behind him. He continued to sprint towards his enemy, eyes closed, guided by inertia and faith. The lurking fear? I think that's the lurking fear. The lurking fear. That's got to be it. Thank you. For the first time since he had appeared, the sitting and smiling man dropped his smile. He looked down at the glowing form of Scott Stapp, who was now fully nude and emitting blinding light from his body. The sitting and not-so-smiling man arose to a standing stance. He was now not so sitting. Freed from the massive weight that had been pinning him down, a gasping and sputtering Gex scrambled away and tripped out through an exterior wall of the Applebee's, collapsing down into unconsciousness outside. Scott Stapp was reaching meltdown levels of energy output. The energy started to burst out of him in little buzzing bullets. They zipped towards the penguins and the sitting smiling man, not standing in... Oh, whoops. Now standing and frowning. There's a lot of typos at the end here. Whoop. Stingers at the ready. Pieces of Scott Stapp broke off into more little glowing energy bee bits. Inch by inch, piece by piece, he fired off himself in bee bullets towards his great adversary and the squads of reanimated undead hench penguins around the bar. With each blast of an energy bee bullet, the enemies disintegrated, their corporeal forms sizzling out of existence like paper held over a flame. Man, that simile is just everywhere. But with each projectile fired, so did Scott Stapp. The others screamed out Scott's name, lamenting the comrade who was rapidly breaking apart and disappearing before their eyes. The standing, frowning man erupted into a great, ear-splitting wail, thrashing about and knocking what remained of the Applebee's into oblivion. Debris flew about the space as the bees dug in and ripped him to shreds. In his final moments, Scott looked back at the party, a calm, resigned smile on what remained of his face.
I will take you higher,
he said, turning back and unleashing one final super attack at his foe. Duke dove to cover the others as the world exploded in white light, and they were all thrown out into the vast cosmos. Lionel saw T-Gex go careening past them as Encarta desperately hung on to Duke's pant leg, and Billy Mays frantically pulled a ShamWow out of the back pocket of his slacks. Bubsy was thrown from the others in the opposite direction of Gex, and before the world went dark, Lionel heard Duke holler, Gex roar in the distance, and the last notes of Scott Stapp's heavenly voice fade away on a cosmic wind. End Part 1. And that is the product of 1 month of collective fiction writing. Thank you, everyone who dropped the fanfic redeem over the past month, who added something to the story. Dialogue, characters, events, random ass shit. Thank you, everyone. Release the gonorrhea. That's part 2. Spoilers. We didn't have time to incorporate the Plato games into it yet. That just happened. We will do this again someday. I don't know when and where. I don't know what circumstances will call for it. Maybe it's January next year. Maybe it's something before that. I don't know. But we have many more adventures yet to enjoy with the cast and crew of Little Lionel's Quest 64. But for now, we are moseying on from fanfic writing. It is now live. You can go read it here. If you missed any of the read today, count yourself lucky. Don't click that link, because the story you just saw, that's where it lives now. It's on the internet at AO3. Already bookmarked it. Watch this space for part 2. Ads are here. I just read for like nearly a full hour, probably like 45 minutes. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, hit the pedal to the metal, keep cruising at a nice 55 on the straight and narrow for the next 8 hours, listening to your song requests. I will see you then.